because you do something for free doesn't mean you can't get paid for it. There are plenty of ways to leverage a free gig that still bring you income. The important thing to realize is that not every free gig can be leveraged in this way. So you have to be able to decipher between a free gig that's a great opportunity and one that really is just a freebie. When you're starting out, free gigs are one of the best ways to get yourself in the game. They give you experience, they help you clarify your message, they help you to identify your audience, you build connections, you get exposure, you gain confidence in what you're speaking about, you build your speaking stamina. I could go on and on about how valuable free gigs are when you first start speaking. And just get anything that you can. And don't think about what can I get out of this, or don't think about how can I make money from this. Just get yourself in front of audiences. So this video is not going to be knocking free gigs at all, and it's not going to be knocking speaking for free. I think it's hugely important when you first start out. When you first start out. It gets to a point where you have to start thinking about, how do I make money from my speaking? Because otherwise it's only ever going to be a side project. You're only ever going to be doing it on your evenings and weekends. And maybe that's all that you want to do, but I doubt that if you're watching this video. I think that you want to be a full-time speaker. You know you've got the ability to change people's lives with what you have to say, and you deserve to earn a living from that. Your impact on the world should be reflected in the income that you make. So how do you make that transition? And it's not actually through eliminating those free gigs. Don't say, well, now that I want to earn money, I'm only going to take paid gigs. Paid gigs are fantastic. They're the holy grail of speaking. But free gigs can still have a really important role to play as well. I'll give you a small example of how this can play out. I was doing a short speaking segment for a cognitive behavioral therapy organization. And they were doing a 2-hour workshop, and they said, David, do you mind just coming in and doing a little 20-minute segment in this 2-hour workshop? So I came along, I did the 20 minutes, and I made £50. That's about $80 for our international audience. £50, $80 from those 20 minutes of speaking. And then I got something further later in the future. Now, how did this happen? I didn't get paid £50 to speak for 20 minutes. What I did was I used the free gig as an opportunity to make my money elsewhere. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this video today, looking at why should you do free gigs? Apart from when you're starting out and you're wanting to get yourself in the game, what other times are actually good to do a free gig? And there's 3 times where I think you can and should accept a free gig. And I'm going to share what those reasons are with you right here in this video. The first time that I think you should do a free gig is for a cause that you're passionate about. And this actually goes against the trend of maybe what I've been saying elsewhere in this video. Because actually, if it's a cause you're passionate about, you might not necessarily be looking for any income from that or any opportunity to make something down the line. If there's something that you really feel you need to share about, or there's an organization or a cause you want to speak on, sometimes you just do that for free. Sometimes you just do it because you care. One example that I had was I went and spoke at my old university for the Psychology Society, the Student Society. And I'd actually been a part of the society when I was at university. I'd been vice president, I'd been president. I'd actually been involved in booking guest speakers during my time on the Student Society. A couple years after I graduated, I was still in contact with a few of the people in the committee. And someone said, hey, we see that you've just gotten into this speaking stuff. Do you want to come and be a guest speaker at the university? You can tell them a little bit about what you speak on. You can tell them a little bit about your journey as a student. You can kind of see it as a bit of a careers speech on here's what you can do after university that perhaps you haven't thought of with your degree. And I said, yes, absolutely, I'd love to. It meant so much to me to be able to go back and be on the other side of that equation, where previously I'd booked speakers to come in for the society, and it was a great honor to serve as a speaker for the society. And I had no intentions to make anything from that. I didn't mention anything that I sold, I didn't sell anything, I didn't talk about ways to make money really. I just talked about my journey, and I shared my story. I shared a few things that I felt I'd learned from psychology, and then that was it. That was my speech. And I didn't get anything back from that. I think a couple of the students followed me on Facebook, and that was about it. And as far as I'm aware, that was, 4 years ago now. As far as I'm aware, 4 years ago, I've never made any money as a result of that speech. But you know what? It didn't matter, because I was speaking about something that I really cared about and speaking for a cause I was really passionate for. And that's the first time that you should expect or accept a free gig. If it's something you're passionate about, don't worry about getting paid. Just go out and do it because you care. The second reason that you should accept a free gig is if it gives you great exposure. And I'm going to underline that word great, because there's a lot of people who offer exposure right now, and you see all these funny internet stories about people who try to get a free hotel or a free holiday because they want to share the company on their Instagram page and they've got like 60,000 followers. I'm not talking about that kind of cheap, fake exposure. If there is a genuine opportunity where you can get your name out there to a ton of people who've never heard from you, that's a pretty good exchange for not getting paid for speaking. The most obvious example of this is a TED Talk. TEDs don't pay their speakers, but man, do those speakers make a lot of money because they've done a TED Talk. That gets their name out there, it gets their work out there, their story out there, the research out there. Think of how many people you'd never heard of until you saw their TED Talk. That's an example of great exposure, and you don't need to get paid for that, because actually the rewards that you get could be way more than a certain financial number. I'll give another example, a more modest example from my own experience. When I wrote my book, The Last 60 Minutes, I was invited to speak about the book and have an interview on BBC Radio. Now, BBC didn't pay me to appear on the radio, but boy, I snapped up that opportunity. I was like, yes, BBC Radio? Of course I'm going to come on and speak on BBC Radio. That's a brilliant opportunity to get my message and get my story out there. I don't need to get paid to do that. So you'll find that these opportunities do come along. If somebody's offering you genuinely great exposure, not saying, oh, I can give you a lot of exposure, and you turn up to the event and there's 17 people there. That's not great exposure. If you've got a chance that genuinely can get you in front of hundreds or thousands of people, that is great exposure. And that is worth not taking a check for the gig. The free versus paid debate is one that rages in the speaking world. A lot of professional speakers, corporate speakers, keynote speakers will tell you to never do a free gig. If you charge less than you're worth, you're devaluing yourself, you're devaluing your message, and you should only ever ask for paid gigs. Equally, the speakers on the other side of the equation who never do a paid gig. They always do a free gig. They do free webinars, free introductory workshops, free pitches, anywhere they can go, because they know that they can make money off the back end of their free gigs. You might have guessed so far from this video that I'm somewhere in the middle of this argument. I absolutely think you should take paid speaking gigs. And when you do, you get paid what you're worth. You don't offer half-price loyalty bonuses. You don't offer special freebies or discounts. You say, this is my speaking fee. If you want to hire me as a speaker, this is what I'm worth. Pay me that amount. Equally, I'm saying there's some great opportunities in the free gig world. There's loads of places where you might not get paid to speak, but you can still make money speaking. And I highlight this distinction and explain more of the nuance in my book, Rise and Inspire. So whether you want to go down fully the paid route, fully the free route, or somewhere in the middle, I'm going to outline that distinction in Rise and Inspire for you. In particular, if you're looking to get the most out of free gig opportunities, how would you do that? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how to do that in the next section of this video. But just to begin the explanation, essentially you've got to have something to sell. You've got to have something you can offer the audience and say, here's a product, here's a service. If you like what you've heard so far in this speech, then you will love what I've got in this XYZ. That actually is exactly what I'm doing right now with the book. I'm saying, hey, if this has been useful for you in getting some clarity on what free gigs is all about, I'm going to explain a lot more about how you leverage free gigs in this book. In particular, creating that price structure, creating that product suite and saying, here's all the things that I've got to offer, whether I'm being paid to speak or whether I'm just turning up for free, you can still make money from those gigs. You can get a copy of Rise and Inspire, ebook, paperback, audiobook, all of the books right now on Amazon. Click the link below to get your copy, and I'll explain a little bit more in the next section of the video what I mean by having something to sell at a free gig. The third time that you can accept a free gig is if you have the opportunity to sell something. And this is the secret behind that gig that I was telling you about earlier on. Remember for the CBT club, the cognitive behavioral therapists, I spoke for 20 minutes and I made £50. How did I do that? What I said to the head of the organisation is, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to come along and speak for a little bit. Do you mind if I bring along my books? And if anyone wants to buy a book, then they're there with me. And then that gives me an opportunity to make a little bit out of this. I'm happy to speak for free. It doesn't cost you anything. And I get the opportunity to make a little bit of money as well. So that's really what you call the win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation. So they get to have a speaker for free. They don't have to pay the speaker. They don't have to budget for it. They're not a hugely wealthy organisation, so they can't afford to be paying even hundreds of pounds for speakers to come in for these little workshops that they're running. So they manage to get a speaker without having to pay for anything. The audience get to see a speaker without having to pay too much. So they just pay their basic membership, and these workshops and these speeches are part of their membership. So they get to see someone, they get to learn something for a lot less than what I'd charge them for, say, doing an online course or running my own workshop or even doing coaching with me. Then I also get the opportunity to make some income out of it. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. I spoke for 20 minutes and 5 people bought a book, £10 each, £50. Now, if you look at an hourly rate for that, 20 times 3 would be an hour, 50 times 3 would be £150. So I've basically been speaking for a rate of £150 an hour, which is quite low in the speaking world, but hey, it's not bad for 20 minutes work, is it? It's not bad considering I might have gone along and spoken for free and not made anything at all. And this is the secret to really leveraging a free gig. Beyond just speaking for a cause you're passionate about, beyond just getting great exposure, there is actually some money that can come your way in a really obvious way off the back of that speech. So this is one of the ways to do it, is to have something that you can sell whilst you're speaking. Now, one of my favorite ways to do that is bring along my books. Basically, anywhere that I speak allows me to bring along books. Nobody ever has a problem with that. So that's a very easy way for me to pick up a little bit of loose change when I'm speaking. But you can get a little bit more advanced than this. You can say, hey, I'm going to be running a workshop in a month's time or a couple months' time, and I think some of your audience might really benefit from this workshop. Do you mind if at the end of my speech I just take 5 or 10 minutes to tell them a little bit about the workshop, and I can have a little form where people can sign up to attend at the end? Some places won't be so happy with you doing that. Other places will be a bit more open. Or you can say, hey, Your audience are the type of people who I really like to do some close work with. Do you mind if I advertise my one-to-one services at the end of my speech? Again, some places won't be so keen on that. Other places will be a lot more open to that. So you've got to have something to sell in order to make the money from a free gig. So you speak for free. The organisers don't have to pay you anything, which they're usually quite chuffed with. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to miss out. It doesn't mean that you don't have to leave yourself out of pocket. You can sell something at this free speech, and you can have some money that you're taking home from that speech. And even looking further ahead into the future, in terms of the people who first see you speak there, and perhaps they start following you on social media, perhaps they sign up to your email list, perhaps they buy the book first off, and then once they've read a little bit more, they go, hey, I want to do some more work with this person. And that starts to create a knock-on effect down the line. I've encountered people 2 or 3 years at one of my workshops, or perhaps they've even done some coaching work with me, and they said, I first saw you at X gig, and quite often that gig was a free one. So this is how you create a long-term source of income. Don't pass up those free gigs just because you don't have the check walking into the room. There's other ways to make money off the back end, and there's ways to do it in a way that's a win-win-win, where the organizer's really happy, the audience are really happy, and you're really happy at the end of it. So don't pass up free gigs just because, well, I'm no longer a beginner speaker. I really need to earn what I'm worth. You can earn what you're worth. You just need to think of more inventive and imaginative ways to do it than just asking for money from every single person, because a lot of places, they don't have the budget to pay speakers. If you speak for a mental health charity, they're not going to have the money to pay you. If you speak for a school or a college, they might have a little bit of a budget, but generally speaking, they're not going to have a whole lot to be able to pay perhaps your full speaking fee, which you've earned and you've deserved. But these other ways can really help to fill that out and make sure that ultimately you're making a living as a speaker. Because that's what I want for you. I want you to be making a living. I want you to be able to put your message out into the world full time. I don't want this to be part-time for you. I don't want this to be something you do when you've used up all of your energy at your job, looking after the family, exercising, and then your speaking is the last thing that gets any attention. I want your speaking to be right up there as a priority in your life, because people need to hear what you have to say. And being able to sustain yourself as a speaker is going to help ensure that they have the maximum opportunity to hear what you have to say.